Uh, can I introduce the next speaker, who is John Grace, University of Edinburgh, and of the Botanical Society of Scotland, who's going to speak about the Urban Flora Project. John, over to you.
Okay. Well, good morning. Let me just set up my screen share. Here it is. Okay, so my name's John Grace. Some of you know me. I know some of you. I'm a retired academic from Edinburgh University, and I'm leading the Urban Flora Project of the Botanical Society of Scotland. I say leading, but it's of course a team effort. And as we all know, leading botanists is like herding cats. So that's the kind of leadership that I have to apply. Now, let me get on with the talk. Whoops, why is nothing happening? I'm on PowerPoint. There we are. So the project has been going for a while. The initial motivation was all about urbanization. So it's interesting and perhaps startling that in Britain, 80% of the population, rather more than 80% of the population are urbanized. And urbanization comes with all kinds of modifications of the landscape and novel features. And what we wanted to do was to demonstrate how urbanization as a process influences plant life and to build a data set about it. And this data set has to be not just about species, but about environment. Now, superimposed on urbanization is climate change. So we're also interested in recording how climate change is affecting plant populations, distributions. Now, these people, these urbanized over 80%, they have little knowledge of plants. Most of them really don't know what grows on their doorsteps, even though a typical Edinburgh or Glasgow street may contain 50 species growing along the edge of the road and pavement and walls and so on. So we also would like to enhance public knowledge if we can. And we've talked about citizen science a lot. And finally, we wanted to energize our membership, the Botanical Society of Scotland. We've got about 270 members. Now, many species live in towns and cities. There are all kinds of reasons why the flora of towns and cities might be different from the rural flora. Cities may be entry points for aliens. Cities may be slightly warmer, but most importantly, cities have a huge range of environment, immense range of microclimate, soil, pollutants, disturbance regimes. For plants, there are stresses, but there are opportunities too. Linear features, cracks and crevices. All of these provide a huge range and a fine grain of environmental heterogeneity. And you find plants in unexpected places. That little picture I've shown there on the right-hand side, you can see the great lettuce outside someone's abandoned garage. And you can see the Canadian fleabane, Cornelia canadensis, and you can see the Oxford ragwort, all three rather interesting plants, and all in one place in a rather deprived part of Edinburgh. And there are good places to look for plants. And we heard just now about agricultural weeds. And of course, although modern farming has reduced the habitat, there is still allotment sites, which are quite often untidy and managed in ways that are rather good for all kinds of plant species. And so we find some older species, some natives, but we also find quite a few opportunistic neophytes, like this shaggy soldier that cropped up in someone's potato patch. That lady on the left, she works in a garden center, and that might explain the entry of this species into this part of Edinburgh. So what are our methods? We visit towns and cities, and to qualify, they have to have more than 1,000 inhabitants. There are over 400 of these, and so we can't go to all of them, but we can go to a fairly good sample. We record all the species and habitat and abundance data. More about that in a minute. And we build a database using iRecord. As far as possible, we engage with other organizations. So we've worked a lot with various natural history groups. And by the way, we're interested in all plant species groups, including bryophytes and lichens, and occasionally the honorary plants, the fungi, they enter into our work. There is huge value of working with other groups. More eyes, you see more. More mouths, you communicate information better. And so we've got a tradition, I'd say, of working and sharing knowledge with other groups. Our database, iRecord, some of you know about this. It has been written about in the BSBI news. And our project, like many other projects, has its own separate workspace. So if you're going to work with this, then you must be careful that you enter data into the right workspace. We don't want your data to end up amongst the dragonflies and the lichens around Somerset and things like that. We want it to be the Botanical Society of Scotland Urban Flora Project. So iRecord is a safe database. It's getting better even. So there have been some recent improvements. And it's altogether a very good way to bring the data into one huge database. There are some issues in the Urban Flora Project. Spatial resolution must be 1 kilometer or better. Most of our recorders use a 6-figure grid reference from their mobile phones. That implies 100-meter resolution. The definition of urban is almost impossible. You can see on that little map, if a site is bounded by urban development, by houses and roads, then it counts. If it's outside the town or the city, contiguous with open countryside, then that's no longer counted as urban. So it's good to look at the map before you go forth. And definition of abundance, we use the 5-point Dafoe scale. That's everything from D for dominant and R for rare. And we look 10 meters in every direction. If it's a linear feature, say it's a road, we look 10 meters one way, 10 meters the other way. If it's a field, we would look 10 meters in all directions. And then we have a set of habitat categories. So we've got the coarse categories, which are in the red box, the red bounded box there. And you can see they're more or less what you'd expect them to be. And then each one of these is broken down into subcategories. So when we come to the great day of analysis, we can really pin down which species occupy which habitats. So what have we done so far? We've got a reasonable database. It's more than 50,000 records. We've got a checklist of urban species. Brian Ballinger has compiled this. He has it as a booklet. It will soon be on the internet, and you can get it either from Brian or from Summerfields. So there are more than 1,200 urban species. And then we've done some specific surveys. We've surveyed the Edinburgh tram line, and we've surveyed the water of Leith from its source to its sink, from the Pentland Hills to Leith, looking at bryophytes, but we'll probably look at vascular plants this year. And we're interested in some data analysis that we've done. We've looked at differences between urban and rural diversity. We've looked at the influence of warming. I've been looking at the BSBI DDB as a resource of research data. And there are some interesting things coming out of that. And we've looked at bryophytes. We have publication plans. We'll move towards a book on the urban flora of Scotland and a number of science papers. If we think about change, most of us as we go around, if we've been working in an area for a few years, we notice occasionally new things cropping up. And these are species that we either found in 2020 for the first time, or we noticed that these rather scarce plants are becoming more frequent. And this is the list. And you can see that many of them are aliens. Many of them are neophytes. And actually, I've looked at their attributes, and I'm doing more of this now, and they all come from rather warmer places. So they tend to be southern, and they've moved north. So this is an indication of a response to warming, I think. One of our most unusual plants was found quite recently in a public park in the north of Edinburgh, and it's Parieteria officinalis, eastern pellitory of the wall. And you can see that in Scotland, there's one site up north, and now there's Edinburgh, and hardly any records in England. The image on the left is another distribution map showing that it's widespread in Europe. And by the way, it's strange that GBIF, the Global Biodiversity Information Source, has got rather different British distribution to the BSBI. I don't know why that is. You can see a picture of the plant. It looks a bit like stinging nettle. Not surprisingly, it is of that family. So the BSS, the Botanical Society of Scotland, we're delighted that BSBI will join forces with us in the Urban Flora Project. There are many benefits. The most important ones are shown here. The geographical coverage will increase. So we've still much work to do, particularly in the west of the country for the small towns. And we want to get a good geographical range because that starts to tell us something about response to rainfall and winter temperatures. We can see great benefits from working with people who've got local knowledge of sites. The local recorders know their sites very well. They're likely to be an increase in skills. Well, we always struggle for expertise. So a small number of us have good knowledge, others have poorer knowledge. And by working with BSBI, we think we can increase our skill levels. And most of all, we want to reinvigorate the Urban Flora Project and help to move towards completion. So what can we do next? From this meeting onwards, if you want to be involved in this, you can go to the BOTSOC website. You can download the guidance documents. You can register for iRecord. You can visit and record settlements near you during your COVID walks and try it all out and see how you get on. And my suggestions for the rest of this year is try a little recording during April. Also try to use the database iRecord, and let's have a meeting. Let's have a Zoom meeting in May with a question and answer session about, what difficulties have you found? And at the end of the year, when we've done a lot of recording, let's have a progress meeting to see what we've discovered. In the meantime, I'm going to make a list of target settlements. I'm going to get the list of about 450 towns and cities, and I'm going to tick off the ones we've had a good look at already, and we'll see what's left, and those will be target settlements. So that's all I want to say. And if you want to contact me, I've got quite an easy to remember address there, jgrace@edac.uk. So thank you very much.